there, and welcome to this episode of Mindset Mentoring for Athletes, Families, and Entrepreneurs. I'm your host, Coach Chuck, and today's guest is a man whose life embodies courage, grit, and perseverance. From serving on the front lines of law enforcement to surviving stage 4 lymphoma cancer, his story is a powerful example of what it means to fight for life with faith, strength, and unbreakable mindset. It's a conversation you won't want to miss, so stay tuned for that.
It doesn't yell, it doesn't bleed, but it's killing us slowly, quietly. Stress, the invisible enemy behind sleepless nights, fractured relationships, fading focus, and dreams left in the dust. It's not just adults. It's our kids, our players, our students. We think it's the stress itself that's the enemy. But the real danger, how we've been conditioned to react to it. What if our normal reaction to stress doesn't have to be normal? What if the most powerful weapon against stress is already inside you?
Welcome back. Our guest today is Thomas Carchidi, a retired police officer, stage 4 cancer survivor, jiu-jitsu black belt holder, and author of the compelling memoir, A Life in Law Enforcement, The Good, the Bad, the Corrupt. Thomas's life has been defined by service, challenge, and resilience. On September 11th, 2001, he was among those who faced unimaginable circumstances. Later, he would confront an equally life-threatening battle, stage 4 lymphoma cancer. Against all odds, he fought his way back to health, proving that the power of mindset and determination can overcome even the greatest diagnoses. Now retired from law enforcement, Thomas is pursuing a new path in law as a law student by channeling his experiences into a deeper purpose, helping others, advocating for justice, and sharing his story to inspire people to rise above adversity. It's a true honor to welcome Thomas Carchidi to the show. Welcome.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for having me on.
It's a pleasure and an honor. Well, let's kind of begin at the beginning. Why don't you just give us a little bit of background about yourself, your upbringing, where you came from, and kind of how you got into law enforcement.
Sure. One thing that's very important to me, and I kind of want to plug it, is I love dogs. I'm a pit bull dog rescue dad, and I don't know if you can hear my brat, my girl upstairs, Nala. She's barking away. She wants to be part of the interview. I put her in the room for now, so I apologize if you hear her barking. But yeah, so a little bit about myself. My mom and dad are from Italy. My whole family, grandparents, aunts, uncles, parents. They're from Italy, from Calabria, Italy. They moved to New York in the 50s. They immigrated here, Brooklyn, New York. I was born in Brooklyn, Bensonhurst, Brooklyn, New York in 1975. Moved to Long Island when I was a kid. Around 2 years old, we moved to Nassau County, Massapequa area. But I was always back and forth, because I had grandparents, I had family, aunts and uncles in Brooklyn. So I'm an only child, but my mom is one of 8 and my father is one of 4 siblings. So I had a big extended family, very close growing up to my grandparents on both sides. My mother's father passed away before I was born, but my mother's mother I was super close to. All my aunts and uncles on my mom's side, my father's side. Both my grandparents, thank God, were alive during my lifetime, and just a super great upbringing I had, and wonderful childhood, and really just given every opportunity. My parents did everything for me, and I lived my parents really came up living the American dream, and I reaped the benefits of that.
I love that, that immigrant story, which has happened with, generationally over and over, right?
Yeah.
People come and work hard, and the next generation usually does, better than the original generation, and so on. So, how did you find your way into law enforcement?
So I had I don't know what it, like sometimes it's just you're pulled to certain things, and I don't really know how or why, but two things I always was interested in an early age were martial arts. We discussed the other day. Um, Ever since an early age, I don't know why, just obsessed, loved it. Bruce Lee, Chuck Norris, you know, uh, and I always was fascinated by law enforcement, cops and robbers, good and bad. When you're younger, you think it's one thing. When you get older, you see things aren't exactly how you thought they were going to be, but you want them to be a certain way, and you believe a certain way when you're younger. And I always had an affinity for law enforcement work, and I love the cop shows on Friday nights, like Miami Vice and anything cop related. I was always interested in. My dad, great story. He was only in this country a couple of years. Like, as I said, he immigrated to America, and he got drafted during the Vietnam War. He got hurt during training, and he got an honorable medical discharge. You know, um, but I always wanted to follow kind of in that lead, and help the country somehow. I didn't go the military route, but I did the law enforcement thing for, a bit.
So, you said in there a minute ago that growing up, cops, robbers, you kind of look at some of the TV shows and some of those were portrayed pretty glamorously and all. And I believe you said like your first job in law enforcement was in a pretty big city, right? Did you start right up in New York, or did you start in a different city, or?
No, no. So after college, after I finished my bachelor's degree, I worked for the government for a short period of time. And I was young. I didn't really like where I was. I was stuck across the country with no family and friends. So I decided to give that up and come back home and go to graduate school and start looking for more law enforcement positions and applying. So that's kind of like I was in between law enforcement jobs. I was in between my first law enforcement job, and then I was heading into the Baltimore City Police Academy, and 9/11 hit. I was working corporate security at a big, well-known corporation company in Long Island, and that's when 9/11 happened.
So yeah, that's one of those defining moments, right? And um, can you kind of walk us through a little bit what the experience was like being there in the city, and just, we can watch all these documentaries, we can listen, you know, but I think hearing people talk about it and explain, and particularly the emotional aspect of what's going on, and the toll that can take on people when you are in the middle of it. Can you kind of share a little bit about what that was like, and the whole emotional piece and everything?
Yeah, so everyone has their own unique experience. Mine, I remember driving into work and hearing it on the radio, and then when I was at work working corporate security, um, like I said, I just finished graduate school. I was waiting to start working for Baltimore City Police Department, and I believe that's when 9/11 took place. And I just remember being like in shock, like I couldn't believe it. And I wanted to help somehow. I wanted to get down there and volunteer and just do something, whatever I could. So I knew it was a long shot, but I jumped on. I wasn't there that day. I give so much credit to the people that were actually, and my heart goes out to the people that were actually there and died and lost loved ones on 9/11. I was there on 9/13. So I think I believe 9/11 was on a Tuesday. I was there that Thursday, that evening, that night, into Friday morning, and sometime after that. But I took the Long Island Railroad into the city, to Penn Station, and then I took a subway line downtown to, like the village, towards the village and the World Trade. And I believe the subway stopped about a mile before, maybe even a little more. You couldn't get anywhere near it because of obviously what transpired. And when I got out, I knew it was a long shot, but I showed the police officer, a young police officer, on his post on a foot beat, and I showed him all my paperwork and credentials. I said, "Listen, I'm leaving. I left one law enforcement job, and I'm going into another one. I'm going to the academy pretty soon. I want to go and help out, do whatever I can." And luckily or whatever, not luckily, whatever the case may be, he said, "Go ahead, man. Be careful." And it was about a mile walk. I remember it was just a mile walk, and it was so bizarre because it was nothing like I'd ever seen back then. At that time, I remember the 80s and 90s. I remember New York City being so vibrant and just full of life and people everywhere, and the streets were empty. It was just pitch black, no electricity. Like, I don't scare easy, but it was a eerie, a strange feeling, almost like an apocalyptic sci-fi movie. So as you walk down further and further, you start to hear, machines, jackhammers, um, all kind of machines, aiding in the 9/11 rescue recovery. Um, and it's just smoke. And as you get closer, you just see everything around is just broken glasses, buildings. And finally, when you get there, the lights, the generators are there. And it was just a surreal feeling. You're literally, I remember being on top of this like hill where ground zero used to be, and you're looking down. And I was standing next to a DEA agent, drug enforcement agent. I'll never forget it. And we just looked at each other and we're like, we didn't even have to talk. I remember just looking and we were like, wow, this is crazy. And we hardly said anything, but we both knew, how we felt. And just buckets, people passing buckets, what they called the bucket brigade. And just chaos. The first couple of days were just chaos. There was really no organization. I remember I got grabbed up by a National Guard. A couple of them, they grabbed me, threw me against the wall. Like, "What are you doing? You looting?" I'm like, "No." And I told them the whole story, and they're like, "Dad, go do your thing." And it was chaos. It was not a good time.
Yeah. We Americans, we've never really, for generations, haven't experienced war, which really that was an act of war on us, on our territory, right? Like you think of Europe and other places in the world that have had to live through war constantly. I've interviewed a couple people who grew up in the Middle East during some of the war times, right? And this was something that we just couldn't relate to, right? I mean, here in America, we just haven't had anything like that, and hopefully we won't again. Uh, Going from that, you have that experience, you end up becoming a police officer, right? And then that whole day, that regular, the stress of what, particularly, in larger, more metropolitan police forces. It's a lot different than some of the more rural ones. Can you talk about what that was like? And in particular, I'd love to have you kind of talk a little bit about your book there and the title of your book, right? You know, and the whole idea of seeing some of the corruption as well, and what that can do to, you know, young officers, people who are coming into the force, to the community around. And in this day and age, police officers are under a whole lot of attacks, and you know, they're it's very sad. I find what how they're oftentimes being treated. So, can you talk about the where on that, and the daily mindset that you need to have to kind of prepare yourself for all of that, right? Seeing the corruption, dealing with the everyday potential threats, and just all of it. I mean, like that just uh, when I begin to even think about it, kind of overwhelms me a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know where to begin with that. So I never worried. I don't think you can worry on a day-to-day basis. I never worried about being on the street or the job per se. Uh, you're right. Policing is policing, but you know, it's one thing if you're guarding government buildings and you're in some safe, secure location, guarding dignitaries, politicians as a police officer. It's another thing completely, you know, if you're working in some rich county, some rich town, or if you're working in some high crime area, high crime city, such as Baltimore, New York City in the 70s and 80s, you know, Chicago, Detroit. It's a different animal. I never worried about getting hurt, so to speak. I don't think I could have done the job if I was worried about that. I was very aggressive, not in the sense that I was going and hurting people, doing corrupt things, going hands on, but I was very proactive when I first started. And I didn't have much fear. As time went on, I realized, you know, and I've seen some horrible things happen to police, you know, partners getting stabbed, got people I worked with getting shot, um, police officers, cops dying in car accidents, horrible things. Um, and then, of course, what the public does to them, to other public members, that's a whole, you know, answering all the 911 calls on a daily basis, that's a whole nother conversation. Some of the terrible things you see as a law enforcement officer, but I never worried about those things in particular. What I was really concerned about was getting stabbed in the back by your own people, the media, the brass, the bosses, we call them the brass, politicians, prosecutors. They're always looking to make an example out of a law enforcement officer. If you F up, if you mess up, they're going to hit you twice as hard. And that's what I was always worried about. You know, that's why I always did the right thing and I stayed on the straight and narrow. I stayed on you know, a legit path. I always did things the right way, but that was the worst part of the job. The always looking over your shoulder, you know, always wondering who's going to get you. You knew the public was out. When I say the public, I mean, you know, the criminals. You knew they were going to do their thing. You always had to watch out for them. But as you get more and more into your career, you realize the thin blue line, it's not what it used to be and it's not what you think. And reasonably, I understand why things needed to be changed, but it's gotten to the point where I don't even know how you do the job anymore. I don't know how people do the job. You know, nobody wants to be proactive. No one wants to do anything in law enforcement. No one wants to touch anyone. No one wants to be on camera, even if they defend themselves. If you put your hands on someone, if you hit someone, even if you're in the right, you're in the wrong. So those were always the things that I was worried about.
And we see in all the movies and television shows and things, right? That the stress of jobs can really wear on people. Um, the idea of the cop who goes out and drinks after the off hours and does other tries to deal with their stress and other ways of self-medicating. How big of a problem was that? Did you see that a lot? And I'm assuming here, so you can correct me if I'm wrong, but with your involvement in jujitsu, I'm assuming that was an outlet that you would often use to help you deal with that. Is that accurate? And how big of a problem is some of those things?
That's 100% accurate. I mean, I don't know any other way but to call a spade a spade. I'm an honest guy. I'm a straight shooter. People either love me or they hate me for it. The truth of the matter is, there is a lot of stress, overwhelming stress in some of these law enforcement positions. And like I said, for me, it wasn't necessarily the street. I was never worried about that. It was the backhanded nonsense that went on, getting jammed up, jamming cops up. It was the nepotism and cronyism, the corruption. If you knew somebody and you had a quote unquote a rabbi or, a high ranking person in your corner, you could do almost anything. You get you get hired with anything on your record, you know, and if you don't, you're basically out of luck. And for most of the people that didn't, that's where I believe the stress came in. You know, you didn't want to go and be the center of a grand jury investigation. You didn't want to go to internal affairs. You didn't want to have the prosecutors looking at you and the department trying to jam you up. And that's where it gets a little stressful. You know.
No, no question. So, kind of help me figure out the time frame here with your cancer coming on too, and in relationship to your job as a cop is, and ultimately then your decision also to leave law enforcement, now pursuing a law degree. How did those kind of come about? When did the cancer happen? Were you still police officer? Is that what one of the things that triggered your decision?
No, I had retired from law enforcement already. I sustained a neck injury in a car accident at work, and I retired early due to my injury at work and some other health issues. And about almost 3 years ago, 2 years and change, I was not that long ago, in 2023, I was diagnosed. 2022 or 2023, I forget exactly. I think 2023. So not that long ago, I was diagnosed with cancer, and when I was younger, it was a weird time because when I was younger, I either always wanted to work in law enforcement or I wanted to go to law school. I always had aspirations of at least attempting law school. So right around the time where I was looking to go to law school, I started feeling sick and not feeling so good. So that's a whole nother story. I had to find a school that would accommodate my needs online, and but yeah, it was a tough time. 3 years. I'm sorry, almost 2 years of just brutal treatment, brutal. You know, chemo, radiation, spinal taps, bone punctures, biopsies. I was in the hospital for 23 straight days with a relatively new treatment called CAR T cell therapy. It's like this new $1 million treatment. Thank God I have, was covered, had great insurance, and I had the best doctors. I went to MSK, Memorial Sloan Kettering. Um, and, through the grace of God and a little bit of my strength, I made it through. I made it through. And I'm about a year and a half in remission. Almost a year and a half in full remission. But it's it was a tough time. It's not. I wouldn't wish what I went through on anybody. And you have to be a certain kind of person to get through certain things in life. Like when you say a tough guy, there's all different kind of tough guys. There's tough guys, martial artists. I'm a tough guy, physically, mentally. I've been training martial arts, getting beat up since I'm a kid. Physical pain doesn't mean much to me. Um, but it's when you say a tough guy, like that can encompass so many different things. Cancer survivors, people that are dealing with certain illnesses and sicknesses that get up every day and they cope with it. World War II veterans, right? People that can you imagine being down at Normandy Beach. Like these are tough people. You have to be mentally and physically strong to get through certain things. And yeah, I think if you're not mentally and physically strong, and most importantly, if you don't have your faith in God, God pulled me through. Without God, I'm nothing. If you don't have that, I I don't think that many people are gonna get through what I went through.
Yeah, that's a nice segue into what I wanted to ask you next, because um, that mental toughness, and I've interviewed quite a few people, right, who've hit rock. Talk about rock foundation versus rock bottom, right? You get
Mhm.
down to the bottom of, and whatever the value structure, belief structure that you have that supports you is where you can then hopefully, you know, get through whatever the crisis is. But a lot of people don't get through. And the more I interview people like yourself and all, that word faith comes out. And, sometimes it's people who grew up in the faith, had it all the time, but lots of times they find it in those moments. Is that faith that you said kind of, we fell back on, was that something that had been in your life your whole life, or was that something that you kind of discovered in these moments of crisis? And and how did that help you get through the battle with cancer, the feeling the sick regularly, and all that treatment does to you? Um, how did that faith kind of help you?
Um, yeah, so I grew up in a Catholic Christian family. Um, I went to private school for my first 9 years, and don't get me wrong, I think we all do. I think we all sometimes, I don't want to say lose faith, but we get discouraged and we stray away from faith, our beliefs, and because we don't understand, we can't believe why certain things are happening. But at the end of the day, I feel in my heart that there's no way all of this, everything we have, is just by accident, just by some chemicals coming together and colliding and creating the Big Bang, and that's all nonsense. Um, there is a higher power, in my opinion, and we're going to meet him one day. And I do believe he pulled me through. I do because some things are just too much. I believe humans for me to deal with just by myself. I don't think I could have been able to pull myself through without friends and family. Um, my parents, my cousin Lisa, people like that helped me through it. And without God, I just don't.
Yeah, I hear you. When my wife was diagnosed with cancer in June of 2022, and she passed away in July, and we had just celebrated our 28th wedding anniversary in June, just after her diagnosis. Wasn't expect like the plan was to, she was going to have surgery, then she was going to do the chemo and the whole thing, and then to lose her so quickly. I've got a very close knit family, friend network, all that, right? That emotional support you can get from people is invaluable. But
Yeah.
it was it was my faith, and it wasn't shaken, it was strengthened. And some people don't understand that, and I don't really know how to explain it. And even, I prayed for miracles. I had prayed for miracles in my grandfather's life. I prayed for a miracle in my cousin's life who died of cancer. But those prayers never manifested in what I was praying for. But it didn't, well, I shouldn't say didn't lose my faith. When I was younger, that's what turned me away from the church. Not having those prayers around my grandfather's healing um, turned me away from the church. But when I came back um, towards the end of college, it hasn't shaken my faith. It's strengthened it, and it's hard to explain why, except there's a feeling inside. And as you said,
Yeah.
there's, as far as I'm concerned, the evidence is pretty overwhelming. And I love listening to some of these debates with the new atheists and religious people on YouTube. You can find some great ones. Um, and inevitably, the debates center the arguments against God always come back to a moral argument and about all these bad, evil things that go on in the world, things that you see day in as a cop, and even the legal system. Um, I've talked with some psychiatrists too who deal with some patients who have some serious mental issues, psychological issues, done some pretty horrific things, and they oftentimes can wear those emotions, and they wonder where a loving God is and all that. And I don't know. This probably isn't the right show or anything to begin to getting into that. That we can go a whole long,
Yeah.
discussion into all that. But the bottom line I find is that more and more people I interview, the more I find that these people, when they hit bottom, begin to have these experiences. I've um, and not all of them are what I would call Christian experiences, but they are deeply religious or spiritual experiences. And it's I don't know. I say lots of times that mankind cannot live without faith. The question really is who or what do we put it in? If you don't put it in something, our whole trust system, relationship, everything collapses. And I think that's one of the great challenges we're facing today is that a large percentage of the people don't have faith and trust in institutions that we used to really put it in: law
Yeah.
enforcement, universities, government, God, church, all of those things. So you survived cancer. You're now going to law school. That's got all kinds of challenges on. Well, are there things that you've now put in your life, regular habits or rituals or things that help keep you grounded and help you really navigate things? Are there things that you've developed over the years? We kind of mentioned the jujitsu as part of it. And I'm sure that also probably goes beyond just the physical. There's definitely what I know of martial arts is definitely a mental discipline kind of thing. Can you talk about maybe some of those things that you have built into your life to help you navigate?
So I definitely believe for anyone in this world, especially high stress jobs, high stress lives, high stress careers, um, you need outlets, right? You need certain things that comfort you, in a sense. Um, Whatever it may be, whether it's the gym, playing golf, martial arts, combat sports, uh, reading a comic book, going to the movies, spending time with your family, your girlfriend, your wife, whatever the case may be, your dogs. Um, I have my things, my animals. I have my close knit group of friends and family that are important to me. I love going upstate fishing. Um, you have to have your things that you like to do that will break the everyday cycle of what you're used to and what you're subjected to, especially, getting back to the law enforcement thing. You don't want to work a 12-hour shift and then come home and talk about all that and deal with that more. You don't want to spend 10 hours in law school classes studying or taking live classes and then do more. Like you need an outlet. And I'm a big believer that people need to find hobbies. They need to find outlets, whether it's physical activity, mental activity, spiritual activity, going to church. Just find something, find things you like to do. Otherwise, the everyday, day to day monotony can just become too much.
I completely agree, and I think that's what happens sometimes when people experience high degrees of stress, particularly regularly, right? Whether it's job related stress or even family dynamics are creating everyday stress. And if they don't know how to switch their mind, find outlets that can get their mind off all those negative, they just end up replaying the same stuff over and over, and it's a downward cycle. And I remember after my wife passed, one of my former students who I kept in touch with, she's actually one of the reasons I really started pursuing what I'm doing now. Because after my wife passed, I had already gone down the road to begin the planning and putting some things together to do what I'm doing now. But the idea then was in my retirement, when my wife and I retirement, this would give me like a second stream of income. I could kind of run my own schedule, speak when I wanted to speak, do all this. But one of my former students who's got this tremendous story, she comes from a large family that had lots of challenges, many challenges, lots of anxiety, depression, alcoholism, drug abuse, all of it. And she had avoided that, like pretty much her whole life. She actually was the first to graduate high school, and she did it a year early. Well, the December after my wife passed, and she knew my wife passed. We through Facebook and all, we've kept in contact. And she lost her brother to a drug overdose and her grandmother who had raised her within like 2 weeks of each other just before Christmas time. And she started going down into a dark place. And the other woman I'd worked with for 14 years, we had been co-directors or co-runners of this program we had where the student was, worked with her. And one of the things she said was that foundation we had laid about trying to find those activities You know, her dogs, getting out and doing all the exercise with her dogs. The dogs helped her begin to get out, beginning to think about what she was thinking about, getting some good music, uplifting music, playing those sort of things. All these little things that she began to like put back into place are what began to break her from that downward spiral. So to your point, it's I preach all the time about what I refer to applying heat to your life, habit, emotion, attitude training, and building the two most important and powerful rituals in your life are a morning and an evening ritual. We all have morning habits and evening habits. When we get up before you go to work and stuff, like everybody I know has some sort of habit that they go through before they head out the door and in the evening before they go to bed. But most of those aren't planned. Most of those aren't done with a purpose, and most of them aren't about trying to get your mind, body, and spirit ready for the day or ready for rest and recovery. And it's so important to, as you said, to find something that can do those things for you, help you deal with the stress in your body, help you deal with your stress and all the things that life deals at you spiritually and mentally. So, and when you said head upstate to like go hunting, fishing, and stuff like that, oh yeah, I love getting out in the woods and
Amen.
stuff. Gotta
Yeah.
gotta
Yep.
love that.
Yeah. 100%. Just to circle back a little bit about what you were just saying, I try to almost every morning, just about every morning, I, when I'm getting ready, shaving, showering, I put on my Bible app and I listen for about 20 minutes, half hour. I listen to selected verses of the Bible. And that's how I kind of try to start my day. That's how I try to focus myself, ground myself. Um, and then I go on from there.
Yeah, you know, those little spiritual practices are just so powerful. And we know things like affirmations are powerful. And Apostle Paul said, and I got to paraphrase here because I don't have it memorized, but something to the effect that you want to focus on the good, the true, the just, right? Anything that's honorable and admirable and the good stuff. You want to focus on the good stuff and fill your mind with the good stuff. And to start your morning that way, it just helps you set the frame. That and gratitude, right? You begin with like, oh man, I am so thankful for this, that, and the other thing. It just it is incredibly powerful. And the more and more you hear and listen to people from highly high powered, high success positions, um, particularly, the coach types, the motivational speaker types, those, they all say the same thing,
Yeah,
right?
I
It's
agree.
all, it's been, it's been handed down to us for centuries, actually. We know these words of wisdom. Uh, it's just so many people don't get an opportunity to really learn it and build it into their life. And that's where this, the whole mindset training kind of thing comes in. I, you know, I think that's one thing I love about martial arts, and I have not participated in martial arts. I've actually started doing some Tai Chi stuff just to kind of as a physical exercise, as a mental exercise too. But from the people I know who've done Lifetime, it's it's a lot more than just the physical and the mental discipline and the emotional discipline and all of that is a powerful thing.
Yeah, martial arts are tremendous. You know, I don't even like to say it. I just had my 50th birthday in October, and I don't know. I don't. When you're younger, it seems like time just drags forever, and as you get older and over, it almost like exponentially speeds up. And I don't know where time went. You blink, and you're like 40, 50, 60. Like it's crazy. But yeah, I can't do what I there's a saying, we joke in the academy, in the martial arts academy, me and my friends. What is it? I think it's I'll never be as good as I was, but I'm as good once as I've ever been, right? So when I train, I can't do what I used to do. I got 9/11 related asthma. I'm a stage 4 cancer survivor, herniated discs. You got all these young kids, 24 years old, out of college wrestlers coming to jiu-jitsu. I can't do what I once did. And no one can. Like once you hit a certain age, you can't. But now it feels good. Where in the past I might have been able to train all day. Now I'll train 1 or 2 rounds with the guys and I'll hold my own. I'll win and I'll feel good. As compared to when I was 25, I'll do 100 rounds. Um, and now I can pass my knowledge on to the guys, the youngsters. I call them youngsters. They're young men, but they're kids to me now. And it just feels good to be able to give back. Um, I love doing that. I love my buddies down the road. They own 2 city cops. One's a lieutenant, one's a patrol officer, and they're both black belts, legit Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belts. Um, under the Kyoto lineage. That's straight under the Helio Gracie and the Gracie family. Um, I started training with them about 3.5 years ago. I've been training all my life, but I started training with them. I met them, great guys, about 3.5 years ago. Wind Jiu-Jitsu in Massapequa. And I help teach for them, like on Friday nights and when I'm available during the week. And it's just such a great thing to be able to give back to people, to teach them martial arts, because martial arts teach you so much about life. Martial arts are a microcosm of life. It teaches you mental and physical toughness. It teaches you uh, skills to cope with problems on the mat, just as you would face problems out in the street or problems with your family or problems in life. How do I get out of this tough situation when the guy's got me and I'm on the ground? How do I get out of this? And it's so amazing to keep your mind going and your body going. And I can't talk enough about martial arts. So, like I said, because of my ailments and everything else, I can't do what I once did, but it feels great to be able to still be in the game and give back. And yeah, I mean, some people, like I said, they love the golf, they love the fish. I just love, the combat sports. It keeps me sharp mentally, physically, helps me stay in shape, which is what I need, for my cancer battle, for my herniated discs, for everything. Keeps me strong, keeps my body strong. Um, and I am a firm believer in, you know, martial arts, the discipline it gives you.
I I I am too. There's a lot of um, there are a lot of different avenues that people can do to strengthen that mind, strengthen their body, strengthen their spirit, and that's really what I talk about with mindset. It's it is that shift that you go through in the mind when you begin to understand that you need these sort of things, that you can do a lot more than you ever thought you really was possible,
Right.
and how you begin to go about interpreting the things that are outside of you. And a lot of these things we talked about are tools for doing that. Um, so I noticed that we are running out of time. I greatly appreciate you coming on and having this conversation. And your book is on Amazon, right?
Yes,
Um,
sir. A Life in Law Enforcement, a police memoir, The Good, the Bad, the Corrupt. It's all
and
over online.
Fantastic. And we'll put a link to that in the show description so that we can drive some people to that book. Would encourage them to read that. Uh, there's there's so much that we can learn from people who share their stories, and that's one I think people should read. So thank you again, and is it was a pleasure having this time with you.
Sure. Thank you for having me on the show. And again, it was my pleasure, and I can't wait to watch it.
Awesome. Well, that was another stimulating conversation. I personally get so much out of these conversations I have
Yeah.
with so many different people that I'm meeting over this. And as always, I would encourage you guys to get in touch with me. I am really looking to bring this message to school districts, to schools, to organizations that deal with youth, to families. So, if you are a member of any sort of organization such as Kiwanis or Rotary clubs or Lions clubs, Elks clubs, any of those sort of things, I relish the opportunity to speak at schools, especially. So if you are and would love to learn more about bringing me on, you can reach out to me at coachchuck360.com. That's coachchuck360.com. And just you can email me or send me a text and just say, learn more about speaking, and um, I'll send you some information on that. Also, if anybody is interested in having a strategy session with me where we can really kind of delve into what you are, any of the challenges you might be facing, lots of times we need somebody from outside of our ourselves in order to help us get a different perspective. Well, that's what a strategy session can do. And then I can give you a plan of action, something that would recommend for anybody who is watching this. I will waive my usual fee for that. You just need to text me your first name, last name, best email, and I will get a unique link to my calendar so you don't need to pay any fee. So once again, you can go to coachchuck360.com and get in touch with me. And until the next time, I want you to go out there and live life to its fullest.